Hello, everyone. I am from a crazy country called the United States of America. Um, I live in San Francisco area, so I kind of understand a little bit about what the last keynote speaker was talking about. However, things are not always so wonderful. Waymo last week went over a beloved cat in San Francisco, drove over it. So AI, of course, has some improvements to be made here. I, for one, am just trying to be intelligent. I'm proud of myself that I put the 2 dots in the right spot on Malmo, because for me, that's a big deal. So, we don't deal with those types of little things on our language. All right, so everyone here, how many use Windows XP? Show of hands. Okay, great, because that's what we're going to talk about. It's now enhanced with artificial intelligence. This is what the talk is about. That's why you're here, right? Because you can still leave. There's other talks. No? Okay, just kidding. All right, what is extreme programming? How many of you here actually know it? Because I've mentioned it to a few people at the conference, and they didn't even know what extreme programming was. So I'm probably an old relic. But yeah, a good number of you know what this is. Good. All right, excellent. Well, then I won't spend much time on this topic, but it's really several people created extreme programming. Ward Cunningham, who invented the wiki, was one of the primary creators of it, along with Kent. They were colleagues and some other people too, but Kent wrote the books on it. So, he wanted to lower the cost of change and make it easier to change software so that it wasn't so difficult and expensive. He wanted a process that had rapid feedback, constantly giving us feedback. And compared to waterfall back in the 1990s, this was revolutionary, really incredible. Ron Jeffries was an early XP person. You may have heard of him, wrote some books on XP and was a big early pioneer. And of course, it defines some values: simplicity, communication, feedback, courage, and respect. And it's about bringing people together and working in very tight iterations and lots of feedback. There's all kinds of practices from extreme programming. It takes a while to learn it. We don't have time to get deeply into all this stuff. So this is really not a talk about the essence of every single practice in extreme programming. We're going to hone in on a few important areas of it. The things that I found to be probably the most meaningful from extreme programming. But these are a nice set of practices here that you can see. And all of them still quite relevant even today. We've definitely improved on a few things, but the core of extreme programming still stands as far as I'm concerned. I think of extreme programming as providing safety. And Kent Beck has been on record talking about how he's trying to make the world safer for geeks. I like that vision. However, I kind of identify with everyone in the software ecosystem, the product people, the users, the analysts and testers and so forth, not just for geeks. So I'm trying to make the world safer for the whole ecosystem. But what I love about extreme programming is it increases safety and it reduces risk. These are important things, especially when we start thinking about AI. Now, how many of you here speak Swedish? Okay, great. I'm going to embarrass myself and then say, "Var snäll mot AI." Okay. We had friends in San Francisco, and when my daughter was very young, their young son would play with my daughter, and the mother would say, "Var snäll mot Sasha." So I learned that phrase. That's all I know. I also know tuck. So that's it. That's all you get. All right, risk management with extreme programming. Requirements risks are things that I believe it does a fairly good job on. You could say that really you want to get into lean startup type stuff and other areas of customer development to really manage the risks of requirements. But, it's on-site customer, by the way, was inspired by Christian Nygaard and his work in participatory design, participating with users, the people actually going to use the software. That's where it came from, the concept. Kent told me so. Steve Blank, if you've heard, one of the creators of Lean Startup, one of the early, just like Ward is a founder of XP, Steve Blank is really the big brain behind Lean Startup. He talks about customer development and how important it is to have that practice, and that's another part of requirements risk. So for me, extreme programming is a beginning. I was heavily involved with it for many, many years, starting in the 90s. But of course, I've been influenced by lots of other stuff beyond it. We'll get into that. There's schedule risk. XP always looked at schedule risk, having small releases and doing evolutionary design. We're going to talk a lot about evolutionary design today, and we're going to look at a real study in it. It's a really important practice, especially with AI. Quality risk, of course, XP, very big on quality risk, very big on focusing on testing and good quality software design, simple design, a large focus on keeping the software easy to adapt and change. Integration risk, continuous integration was always a big thing, integrating into trunk many times per day, not living in branches and having merge hell. And change risk, again, being able to easily change the software, keeping the cost of change low. So there's this, embrace change is the subtitle of extreme programming. And that's really important. AI is this tidal wave of change coming at us. We have to embrace that, in my opinion. Embrace it in a way that's safe. Now, I spent many, many years working on a book, which nobody reads, but it's called Joy of Agility. It's all my best stories from 20, 30 years of being in this industry. And it influences my thinking all the time. It also is inspired a lot by extreme programming and other things that I've learned over the years. And so it's going to influence this talk as well. There are 6 mantras in the book. I love all of them. They're like my children. But it kills me not to talk about each and every one of these things. The first one is being quick but not hurrying. When it comes to AI, that is extraordinarily important, but I'm not going to talk about it in this talk because there's no time. I am going to talk about being balanced and graceful, starting minimal and evolving, and driving out fear, okay? A lot of these things are not mine. Be quick but don't hurry is from John Wooden. Drive out fears, inspired by W. Edwards Deming, and a lot of these are coming from different industries. Be poised to adapt comes from the resilience engineering people. All these are very, very meaningful, though, for really being agile, and they're influenced by extreme programming. So let's look at start minimal and evolve, okay? So a friend of mine, I want to say his name correctly. Is it Thorbjorn? Is that the way to say that, right? Thorbjorn? Thorbjorn told me this story in Norway many years ago, and I just loved it. It's a true story. Maybe some of you might even know it. Any of you take the train in Norway sometimes? Okay. Well, they basically had all of these kiosks throughout the country at these train stations and in convenience stores where you would buy a train ticket. And that was in the 90s. And at some point they said, we would like to, easily change that software, and we can't. We have to go to each and every machine and upgrade the machine every time we want to change the software. Not very agile. So they wanted to basically convert it over into a web-based solution that they could just deploy to anytime they wanted. All right. So read a little story here. I'll just go from the middle here. The old system ran on hundreds of computers located in train stations and convenience stores throughout Norway. It was built before browsers and web technology existed. Making changes to it required manually updating the software running on each and every machine one by one. Modernizing to a web-based solution would allow the railroad to quickly and easily release improvements. Thorbjorn and a product manager met over drinks to consider how best to approach this upgrade. The existing software allowed people to buy one-way and round-trip tickets, weekly and monthly passes, specify which train stations to travel between, and request ticket refunds. Okay, so it did a lot. Now, let's go over to ChatGPT. How would it handle this type of task, this modernization? I asked it. And let's see what it had to say. So here's my question, here's my prompt. Did my best to, give some context. Basically just explain what I just explained to you, okay? So I think I was, I wrote enough detail in this to give it some clue for what we're trying to do. Of course, it complimented me. Excellent scenario. It's always, I just feel so good when I use it. A 1990s era software modernization story at the birth of the web. Wonderful. Let's treat this as a real world transformation. And it's going to shift us into this new world of the web. Wonderful. All right. So it gave me like 8 or 9 different points of what to do. It spit this out. It spews stuff out very quickly. And here we go. So I'm not going to read all this stuff to you. You'd really think I'm a terrible speaker if I did that. But, this first one's understand the existing system. So let's kind of like analyze every last little thing. Let's create architecture diagrams and domain models and dependency and inventory. Let's just really analyze it. Great. Let's define a target architecture and goals. Centralized web application, thin client, single source of truth. Let's do some web servers. Back then it was Netscape Enterprise Server. Okay, great. So defining our architecture and goals. Strangle and migrate. It knew about the strangler fig pattern. So I guess it's crawled the web and figured this stuff out. This is all zeros and ones at the end of the day, but it figured this stuff out. And it basically said, we want to keep the kiosk running, don't do a rewrite. Rewrites are dangerous. It must have learned that somewhere, right? Doesn't really have a brain, but it learned not to do rewrites. Let's strangle it slowly, right? If you're familiar with the strangler fig pattern, it came up with this idea and eventually replaced the kiosk UI with a web front end. Okay, zero install and instantly updatable. Build infrastructure for rapid change. So of course, use version control and automated builds and automated testing and feature toggles. It's really, it's always trying to impress. All these cool things. Model the core domain carefully. It's mentioning domain-driven design. My friend Eric Evans would be quite happy that it's spitting this stuff out. My friend Rachel Davies would not be so happy because she got rid of this user story format, this as a SOI, that as a kiosk customer, she abandoned that years ago and she created it. Okay, well, the web still has it all over the place. Pilot and expand. Phase 1, one station or one set of kiosks connects to the web version. That's not bad. But they've already told us to change all the software to have it, use this new system. So it's a little dodgy in what it's saying, but some of it is not bad. Retire the legacy system. Okay. There's a word spew. Okay, it means to expel in large quantities, to be poured or forced out in large quantities, or to vomit, to spew. I like to say these days, is the solution spewed or is it shrewd? Right? We want to be shrewd if we possibly can. And to do that, we're going to have to use our brains. Now, turns out people that have studied extreme programming have a higher chance of being shrewd because they've learned a couple of ways to manage risks in software development. So what did they actually do? Okay, so Thorbjorn and his product manager met for drinks, and over drinks they decided, let's keep things really, really simple to start. Okay, the mantra is start, minimal, and evolve. This is not exactly what you're going to get from AI, right? You're going to get a very complicated explanation of all the things you want to do. Well, they started much simpler than that. They said, let's just worry about one local station going to the major city. That's it. Let's write some software to do that. Okay. Let's go further. I call it 1 plus none equals done. And here's what they did. One store, one convenience store. They said, we're going to find one convenience store that's willing to let us do this experiment. It's going to have one browser. So they set up a little machine with a browser. It's going to have a single button. That's all you see on the screen was just a big button. That's it. To buy a ticket from that one local station to the big city. That's all it could do. 0 weekly passes, 0 monthly passes, 0 refunds. You couldn't even get a round trip. It would just go one way. And they decided to write the software for that and see if anyone used it. Okay. Now, I like to talk about evolutionary design so much that I've come up with some visual metaphors for it. Anyone know what this is here? It's a guitar. Yes, some of you might have seen some of my earlier pictures of this. You're cheating. But do the simplest thing that could possibly work is a phrase from eXtreme programming. A very important phrase. Very important, especially with AI, because we have the opportunity to do very, very complex things. But to do the simplest thing that could possibly work is much safer, typically, especially as you're evolving. So I love this phrase, and hopefully it becomes something that you think about a lot. Do the simplest thing that could possibly work. And then simplicity, this is from the Agile Manifesto. It's in the principles section. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. The amount of work not done. AI can do a lot of work. And I'm trying to go the opposite direction and say, what can we not have it do? How could we do less? How could we keep things really simple? So this one-string instrument, which is going to become a guitar, it's a real thing. There are people out there like Brushy One String. He plays the one-string guitar. You can actually go on YouTube and listen to him playing. It's really cool. It's a great song. And if you like the White Stripes, Jack White, he creates his own one-string guitar and then starts playing it on a YouTube video. It's called It's About to Get Loud. So these things are playable. Now, the one-string guitar version of the Norwegian train system that they were emerging, this new system, started out with the one screen, with the one giant button, buy ticket. And what it did was it talked to the store register, it hit a payment service, and it talked to the back-end railroad system. That's all it did. Those 3 operations. So they just had to write just the code to do that and have it work correctly in that one convenience store. Not a lot of work. They made that happen. And people bought tickets. They actually bought tickets. They went and observed them and they bought tickets. It was amazing. It worked. So evolutionary design, emergent design, some people call it. The guitar is going to evolve. Here's the next iteration of it. Now we have 4 strings. We still have no frets. We still have no sound hole. We're missing a lot of stuff. But we are slowly evolving the guitar and we're getting lots of feedback. We're putting things into production perhaps as soon as we possibly can to learn from our environment, to learn from our users. This is risk management. That's why I love eXtreme programming. And then from there, we learn and we evolve to the next iteration. And then from there, maybe the next iteration until maybe we're happy with what we've got. And this corresponds to what they did. The second pilot went to 2 convenience stores. And when they did that, they discovered they had an authentication defect, which they quickly fixed and deployed. No big deal. That worked well. 2 convenience stores actually working. Okay, they went to the 3rd pilot. Much more functionality, increased to 5 locations, working beautifully. And finally, they went system-wide with this solution. That was the story of how they modernized the train ticket system in Norway. True story, and I think a beautiful illustration of evolutionary design, of starting minimal and evolving. Agile analysis, it was quick, less than 10 days to do. Resourceful, they found ways to learn and earn gracefully. They were actually earning money from the various first pilot, but people were buying tickets with it. You know, you can have what we call learning slices, vertical slices, or earning slices where you're actually earning, or they can be both. You're learning and earning together with your thin vertical slice. and they were adaptable. They easily evolved quality, easy to change software. We started with very simple software, right, to do very little, and evolved it. Be balanced and graceful is another mantra from Joy of Agility, and relates to extreme programming practices, as we'll see. So I like there to be balance. I find that balance is critical to doing great work. Discovery and delivery are very important. There are people now saying that, my friend Melissa Perry wrote a book called Escaping the Build Trap. Anyone read that book, Escape the Build Trap? It's a very good book. She's now thinking of writing a sequel to it called Escape the AI Build Trap. And it's because we can now generate so much code so quickly that, people are starting to build lots of things, but they're not doing enough discovery. They're not learning enough from their customers. Back to Christian Nygaard in participatory design, or Steve Blank in the customer development, learning from our customers, what should we build in the first place? We need the right balance between the two. And AI can help us, even with discovery. We just have to get that balance right. We are using, LLMs to now create sample user interfaces. It's trivially simple. Claude is very good at this, right? You just explain what you want, it starts generating a UI, and then you can put it in front of people. The other day, we have working with a legal tech company. The lawyer was using Grok to create his own user interface to, ask customers what they thought of it. It's so amazing. So we can get incredible discovery now with not a lot of work. Amazing. I like to balance some of the tools I use between human stuff and, AI. So when it comes to refactoring, I will use automated refactorings in IntelliJ, and then I will also let the AI do some refactorings that IntelliJ doesn't do very well. I'm balancing my, personal stuff with what the AI can do, trying to find the right balance there to see what each one is better at. I'm not exclusively using one or the other. Now, this one here could have gone in the other category, which is another mantra, the drive out fear. This one here is the code standard, the coding standard. XP has a coding standard. A lot of people complain about what software is being generated by the AI. Now, they don't do anything to actually help it. They just complain about it. What you can do, and what extreme programming did early on, is to say, let's define a coding standard. Let's define how we want to code, right? How are we going to do certain things together? What is our naming convention, for example, or how do we want to handle exceptions if we have some rules around that? Making a coding standard can take some time, so you could evolve it. Start minimal and evolve. Begin with a couple of rules, and then add some more and add some more to it. You could even ask AI for some help. But you can also then tell AI, use our coding standard when you're producing code for us. It might not listen, but if it does, you'll get better code. I've seen it work. So I think there's also a chance to balance direction and delegation. This is a big one, because we need to be giving AI lots of direction before delegating to it to generate code. We as humans must be directing it, right? And there's all sorts of ways to do this. Extreme programming was always focused on know the end before you begin. Test-driven development was based upon that concept of know the end before you begin. Write a test before you start writing the code. And that's been taken to different levels within the stack. BDD tends to look at a higher level, behavior-driven development. Some called it acceptance test-driven development. I used to call it story test-driven development in the early 2000s. But the point was, let's be really super clear about these specifications, mini specifications that tell us what we want to go do. We know the end before we begin. Now, today, people are doing amazing things with this. I didn't know about this tool yet called Kiro. Anyone use Kiro? So, great. I learned about it in the gym at the hotel across the street, but it's letting you define specifications. So it's spec-driven development that's all souped up with AI. And lots of other people are working on this. My friend Naresh in India created something called Specmatic. They're producing specs and generating code from that. Giving the right direction is super important. That's where our brains come in. And then we can delegate a lot of other stuff to AI with some constraints to make sure it does it safely. Now, anyone read this book yet? It just came out. I would recommend it. I'm like 1/3 of the way through it. So far, I'm enjoying it. I do respect these two people, Gene and Steve. And they said this. I love this quote. When AI start beating humans in chess, we assumed it was game over. But then they learned that if you team an AI with a human, that team can beat AI alone. There's something beautiful about that analogy. Devs will be teaming up with AI, not being replaced by it. Important, very important observation. You're smarter together with AI. It's not just AI alone. And that's important for the solutions you come up with as well. Try to come up with AI solutions that include the human in the loop, that let the human and the AI collaborate. That's balance. So we find that when it comes to simple design, and simple design is part of eXtreme programming, it's a core practice of eXtreme programming, saying it's very, very important to have a simple design. We find that humans have to be in that loop, especially people with a lot of experience in software design, who know way more than AI. How can we keep it simple, right? And oftentimes you come up with far simpler solutions as humans. I've even called companies, literally called companies and said, your software doesn't do this today, but I would really like it if you could make your software do that, because we need to call it and have it do this thing that it doesn't do today. Would you be willing to maybe make that change? AI is not going to do that. Not yet. Maybe that's 20 years away, that conversation. But in fact, we succeeded. They made a modification to their tool to support what we needed. It was this security thing that we had to dance around, but they did. That's just not going to happen with AI. It made for a much simpler solution. When I asked Chat or Claude or Gemini to do the exact same work, it was coming up with all this crazy design to try to get around this problem. And I'm like, it's just going to be easier to ask the company to make the change for us. So humans have to be involved to have simple design. And simple design is far more cost effective and easier to work with, right? You want that. So human intelligence and artificial intelligence have to be balanced to some extent. You've got to think about the balance between the two. Very important. Going back here, let's talk about this again now. If we were to do this today, what if we combined the brilliance of Thorbjorn and his product manager and the team with AI? How quickly could we have accomplished this using emergent and evolutionary design along with AI? It would have been even faster and more graceful and elegant. Amazing. LLMs tend to over-deliver. You've probably all experienced this, right? Let's flex the muscles. Can you all do this for a bit here? Let's just it's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger moment, right? You're bodybuilding. It just does too much. It's just spewing stuff out, and there's all this crap, and it's just like bloated, and it's like being this muscular thing. You've got to just deal with that because it's a real problem. So my friend Amanda Graham, she just wrote this the other day on LinkedIn, and I just loved this. She had to write a little code for some research project. So she produced 24 lines of code. You can barely see it in the diagram there. 24 lines of code. And then she asked Claude to do it, and Claude created 1,800 lines of code in 3 files. What's going on here? What is it doing? This is not too good. Yeah, it worked. It worked. And she later said that maybe if she'd given it a better prompt, it might not have created so much code, but 24 lines of code is nice and elegant. We don't want to abandon that, in my opinion. We got to have that balance between what we know and what AI knows. But there's also a lot of finger pointing. There are a lot of people that are very negative on AI and point the finger at it and saying, it's no good. It produces crap. And the fact is, a lot of times, that's a tell that that person has very little experience with AI, that they have not yet learned how to work with AI to get it to do what you want. A lot of times when I hear people complaining about it, I find that they're new to AI, they don't know how to control it better. So you have to learn. You have to actually learn how to make it create the kind of code you want. And I meet people who really just don't want to use it at all. They are absolutely 100% not interested in AI. They're actually very good coders that I know, and they're like, I'm perfectly happy doing this all myself. I have no need for AI. And their colleagues are using AI, and they're not. And you kind of have to respect them because they're part of your team, and you're going to find those people. Anyone work with people like that? Yep. And it's understandable. Okay. The last mantra I want to talk about is drive out fear. And some of you came to my collective risk management talk. You might have seen this quote, but the chief motivation for all human actions is the desire to avoid anxiety. I think this is very relevant when it comes to AI. And even though it's extremely old, we are trying to avoid being anxious without having to take pills. So there are a lot of things to be anxious about when it comes to AI. Hallucinations, bloated solutions, overconfidence, erratic behavior, loss of control. I've written RAG AI, retrieval augmented generation code for this legal tech. And it works beautifully. It's working, it's working, it's working. And then one day, I didn't change the code, and I'm calling the LLM. It's not returning anything. Like, what's going on here? Did they just release a new version and they're getting slammed? What's happening? But stuff like that makes me anxious. And remember, the chief motive of all human actions is the desire to avoid anxiety. I got very anxious. I'm like, how is this going to work in production when it just randomly doesn't return anything? Not good. Hallucinations, really not good. Have to work very, very hard to prevent that. So another quote from Vibe Coding. Today's AI has plenty of limitations. It makes up function names that don't exist, forgets what it was doing halfway through a task, and occasionally insists that 2 + 2 = 5 with complete confidence. But focusing on AI's current limitations is like judging a Model T from 1908. We have to be patient. We have to be understanding that it's growing, it's changing, it's improving, and don't overly judge it. But my guru friend, who's been doing AI for decades, this is the kind of person that, you'd think that he's the busiest person in the world, but he said all of a sudden, everyone became an AI expert overnight, and he's an actual AI expert. So I go to him to learn everything I know about this stuff. And he said to me, never trust a single LLM. He said, there's no reason to write a software system that works with one LLM. You need to write the system to work with several LLMs. And then you need to have them compete with each other in real time to fight over what's the better result. That's resilient. And that's a far better way of working with AI. So that's what we did. Right? We made the code work with Claude and work with Gemini and work with ChatGPT. And so if ChatGPT decides to return nothing to me one day, I'm not too worried about it. I've dealt with my anxiety because I don't trust a single LLM in production. This we talked about already, these small, safe steps. You're going to have a far better experience if you practice evolutionary design with AI. Deep XP practice of evolutionary design, or some call it emergent design, If you combine this with your use of AI, I think you'll get far better results. Keep it really simple to start and evolve it. Example, because a lot of people don't know this stuff. I find a lot of people know how to sprint. They say we're sprinting, we're agile, we're sprinting, which is complete nonsense, because anyone can decide to work in a 2-week time box or a 1-week time box. Who cares? Do you all know where that came from? It's Jeff Sutherland went to MIT, and the students were competing to continue to have funding. So basically, every two weeks or so, they demo what they did, and if it was good enough, they kept getting funding. That was the reason that sprints existed. It came from that particular example. Most of us are not in a situation like that. We have a budget, and we're working. I don't use sprints, haven't used sprints since 2008 or 9. What's much more important is learning how to split, learning how to create vertical slices. Here's examples. Fran adds item to cart. Very, very, very simple cart, just like the one-string guitar. Then we go to the next version of the cart, and then the next version of the cart. That's evolutionary design. You can do it with anything. And you need to learn how to do it really well. Don't be a victim of randomness. A lot of people treat the AI like a slot machine. What's it going to produce now? Let's just roll the dice, or let's pull the handle. Anyone ever go to Las Vegas and see these poor folks constantly just hitting the jackpot and trying to hit the jackpot? If you're going to use AI well, you're going to have to really learn how to communicate very, very effectively with AI. Super important. That's it. That's all I had. If there's any questions, happy to answer some. Yes.
Did you think about trying to give ChatGPT XP guidelines and pre-run your prompt? See what it came up with?
I did not try that. I didn't even ask it to produce the code this time around because, it's from way long ago, and it doesn't have access to this actual back-end railway system. But there's no reason not to. In fact, it knows me. It does know me, right? Because my account has history. So I think even the response it gave me already mentioned things like DDD or other XP concepts. And so I think it was already tailored to my particular, perspective. But yes, I think giving it data like that is very important, to tell it this is the way I work. Never write me any code that doesn't have tests, for example. All that stuff. Teach it. Treat it like a real collaborator. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.